Hi, I am Arkeem Ra, and I'm here with Penny Bradley, and this is the first upload to the Fractal Weapons YouTube page. We're going to be discussing the Secret Space program, which is a Black Ops military abduction that's happening right now to different people across the country and the world. And we're going to kind of just like break it down and try to start from the beginning and really explain what it's all about. So Penny, do you want to maybe just like introduce yourself, or should I introduce you?
I can talk.
I'll let you introduce yourself. I think you could do it
Uh,
best.
okay. My name is Penny Bradley, and I've been public at this point 6 years. I was the first person to come forward admitting that I had served with what they were then calling Dark Fleet. I went into self-hypnosis because Germans would not call themselves Dark Fleet, and remembered, pulled out of my memory what they called it, which was Nachtwaffen. And I have since found out that one of the factions that considers Nachtwaffen their enemy has tagged on rigueur, which is a Spanish word meaning roars. And it's their way of saying that this group is a paper tiger that just roars and has no bite. So when you hear someone say Nachtwaffen rigueur, it means they're from Planetary Corporations Alliance, what some in the community call ICC. And so there are 6 factions out there that I know are from Earth, and they are all in competition with each other. Some of them are working together, but they're still separate entities and will eventually compete. The Germans are pretty much isolated out there, except that they have a treaty with the United States to provide 150,000 Americans every year to serve in Nachtwaffen. I was one of those in 1964. So this has been, the treaty
So this
was
is still
signed.
ongoing,
This is still ongoing.
and this is done through basically taking a human being, bringing them there, and then age regressing them in time travel, right?
It uses the time travel and age regression technologies. But what is going on is historically, the Germans who had escaped to Antarctica won World War II, and they forced a treaty onto President Eisenhower in 1956. And he knew it was coming because they had tried to force it on Truman, who was the president before him. And so he already knew what the terms were going to be. So a lot of agencies were created in that time frame. And people think that the Office of Strategic Services was eliminated, but it wasn't. It just went underground. And in my paperwork, I am still considered to be an asset of the OSS. So this is important because this is who is handling us, is an organization that has gone underground. People don't understand it's still there. Now, in my case, my family was being watched because of who we were related to. And when my parents got married, my mother's doctor was told this was a national security issue. And this was the Cold War. National security trumped everything. So anytime my mom got pregnant, her doctor reported it, she was abducted, and the baby was modified. My mom had 5 live births and 2 miscarriages. So this was an era where that was a normal family size. So we're not talking about anything out of the ordinary. These were 2 teenagers who got married and proceeded to have 5 kids. And we all show signs of genetic modification. We all have the weirdnesses that go along with serving in these black ops. So they took all 5 of us.
So how long has this been going on for on Earth?
As far as I know, the first kids taken by the OSS were during World War II. The Germans were taking their own kids as far back as the American Civil War. And if you look through history, extraterrestrials were taking humans to serve in their militaries going back thousands of years. The only thing that's really new is that we're doing this to our own kids now.
Why do they take children?
They say that it's because when adults are introduced to the extraterrestrials that they go insane, and that children are more accepting of them. But from my studies with the Illuminati families, this is how they treat their own kids. They say it's the only way to activate their psi abilities is to torture them as children. That it can't be done once they get past puberty. So that's part of why they're so emotional, detached, able to do cruel things to people, is because they have been tortured in their own childhoods. The thing that we have noticed through these programs is victims become perps. And this is the pattern that holds in those families as well. So that's what's happening to the ruling class. To activate their psionic abilities, they're tortured as children. They become mind fractured, and then the fractures are trained in different ways. So basically, we were treated the same way that these people are treating their own kids, except we have been in it longer. Now, I know I'm taken multiple times. That was one of the, I didn't understand that at first, but that was one of the things that was most hurtful, okay, was to understand that to the OSS, I'm a tool, like a truck or a screwdriver.
Yep. Piece of
And
military equipment.
A piece of military equipment, and I'm an expensive piece of military equipment. So why would they only use me once?
The people that like to think that this is some sort of fun science fiction story where we get to go out in space and play superhero, we're slaves. We're kidnapped as children, and you don't know what night you're going to get taken, and you're going to wake up and there's another, how many, like 100 years gone? I don't know. Like, depending on who you serve with, they do different amounts of times, but
the American factions put you into a cloned body, and the clone will push you out at about 25 years. So they schedule your missions for 20 years or less, because once the clone pushes you out, then that person is useless to them anyway. So
Couldn't they just reinsert that fracture into another clone?
they
For the
can't.
clone?
I have had that happen. I have an alter that I've since reintegrated, that she started off with Kruger, which is an American mercenary company. And she was in a clone body. And she died in a space battle. Something hit the front of the fighter plane. And instead of having windows, they have a view screen like a plasma TV. And whatever hit it fractured the plasma TV screen, and the broken glass basically stripped her skin off, and they couldn't save her. So they put her out of her misery for the clone. My alter was back with me for 36 hours, bawling her eyes out the whole time. I have this thing in the back of my head that's crying for 36 hours. And then she's gone again because she's put back into another body. And her contract was purchased by Nachtwaffen. This is the altar that serves with Herr Mayor. And we went to a planet where she became contaminated by a virus of some sort. And so she was again put down and was back with me for 36 hours and then was put into another clone. So that 120-year contract period had 2 replacements. So 3 cloned bodies to do 20 years. I don't know how common that is. The Germans don't usually use a clone body because their medical technology puts back the mind that goes with the body. So anytime you would have to be regenerated to fix your arm or something, you would end up with the mind of the clone rather than the mind of the asset. And so they just take your whole body and put you at the age that they want you for the whole time. And because it's my body, I can be in it longer. And so I usually serve 55 to 60 years when I'm with the Germans. Okay. So it's 20 years at a stretch with the Americans and up to 60 years with the Germans. I've only heard of one person who thought she'd been with them longer.
What are the specific reasons that you think that this is kept? That, okay, I guess, like, what are the secret space colonies and why are they kept secret and why is it kept covert?
The whole thing is kept covert because the American people, the Allied nations, all told their people that they won World War II. And the truth is they didn't. Japan and the Germans in Antarctica, not the Germans in Germany, they surrendered. The Germans in Antarctica didn't. They
Which are 2
won.
separate groups.
They're by the time that Germany, the nation, surrendered, they were already 2 separate groups.
And so the Germans that were in Antarctica, would they be the Nazis or would they be different than the Nazis?
The Nazis were a political party. The ones who were in Antarctica were more the German historical aristocracy.
So like the
So
royalty?
Yeah, the royalty, the people who had been running the tribes for millennia, they ended up in Antarctica with the technology to leave. And
What do you think that knocked like the German colony as it currently is, and just like I guess knocked Waffen? What do you think that their stance or like like what do you think they think of like the Nazi Party and what happened on Earth? What do you think their thoughts are on that?
I can share what I was taught in Shula on Mars.
Okay.
I was taught that the the treaty that ended World War I, the treaty that ended World War I was so bad that it was a form of genocide to the Germans. That the monarchy and aristocracy had been taken out of power, that these had been tribes ruled by their elite for millennia. These people had no idea how to run a democracy. And the aristocracy had been banned from running for office. So nobody in charge knew how to run a country. And the bankers were printing money as fast as they could. And the consequence was you had people on fixed incomes, on pensions. Okay. You have a fixed income of $600 a month, and suddenly it takes a whole wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. The people on those fixed incomes were starving to death and
It kind of
freezing to
sounds like a
death.
familiar situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, they were freezing to death in the winter. And the aristocracy was in these secret societies. And they figured out a plan to put a strong man into power so that their weaker members could survive. Now, remember, these people are starving to death. There's no work. Nobody's allowed
Yeah.
to contract with the nation. Their main things that they did for a living for hundreds of years were sell themselves as mercenaries to other countries and do engineering, ironworks, railroads. If you can't sell your engineering and you're not allowed to be military, what are they going to do for a living? They don't have enough farmland there to support their people. And they have nothing for money. So what ended up happening was this strong man, and I'm not going to name his name because everybody knows who I'm talking about, but if I say his name, we'll be in trouble on YouTube. So he was put into power to change this, and he was told a step-by-step plan on how to change this. And he got his support from the far right wing. So these were radicals to begin with. Now, once he got into power, he basically cut his ties with the people who put him there. He went through and destroyed huge sections of followers. The brown shirts were all killed off after he was in power. And then he switched from the German aristocracy to the Jesuits. And if you look at the people who were brought to America during Operation Paperclip, yes, they were Nazi Party, but if you look deeper, you'll find almost all of them were also Jesuits. these were the people who lost the war for the German
I'm just
nation.
curious though, did they look at the situation and how it all played out unfavorably, the German colony, or did they
They
look at it?
went through and did a deep analysis of why it failed, and they blamed it on the Jesuits. Now, historically, there has been an ongoing battle going back to the beginning of interaction between the Germans and the Romans. So we're going back 2,500 years. There has been an historical warfare between the two groups, between the German people and first the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire, and then the Vatican, who replaced them. And that's why it mattered that these were the Jesuits, is because the Jesuits have been the assassins of the Vatican. So Hitler basically turned over the entire war program to the enemy of the German people. And that's how it's viewed from Shula on Mars. They viewed him as a traitor to their cause. And he was not on Mars. He was in Argentina. He was not allowed
Yeah,
on
that's
Mars.
basically what I wanted to know, and that was a good explanation of it. Because I was just curious. I don't have like I know I've served with Nachtwaffen, but I don't think that I remember. Like I don't remember what they told me about history, or if I knew. I don't have that much memory of it, so I was just curious what they thought of that whole situation. Because obviously it
Uh,
ended up being a bad situation for pretty much everyone. So
yeah, it was a
I would
bad,
imagine that
really bad
would have been.
situation for everybody. And they were in a position of they were starving and freezing and had no options. And they felt they were being genocided. And they blame the Jesuits for the genocide of the
Who are the
Jews.
and then who are the Jesuits? The Jesuits are. I know that you did like a show, an entire show where you talked to that guy that was a historian on the subject recently, but the people
Yeah,
watching might not
Leo
know.
Zagami is a member of the Knights of Malta. And he has been exposing a lot of the nonsense that has come into the secret societies because of the influx of people from OTO, Ordo Templis Orientalis. And he's personally mortified by their practices. And so he's been trying to expose this as you have basically good guys, and then you have this group coming in that's contaminating everything. And it's a lot of the reason for the confusion that people have about all the secret societies now.
It's because
Is
there's it's not black and white, like they're good or bad. There can be
yeah,
bad defectors within them and stuff like that.
yeah, they have been contaminated, is his view, by OTO. And
And so the Knights of Malta, is that like associated with the Jesuits? Is that like a modern version of it, or
it goes back to the Crusades, and in about 1,000 years ago. And there were all of these orders that came out of the Crusades. And at the time of the Crusades, they were military orders. But since then, they've been more like, this is the secret knowledge, passing it down because you'll be burned at the stake if you talk about it openly.
yeah?
So, and the Jesuits are the ones that were burning people at the stake.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
even within these groups, there are the Jesuits. Now, most of these orders started off as Vatican approved, and over the years were booted out because of the activities of the Jesuits.
So the Jesuits are kind of the ones that are responsible for like genociding all of the different cultures, like native, like indigenous cultures around the world and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
they, whenever that Columbus got credit for discovering the New World, but the Knights Templar already knew about it for hundreds of years before that. The Pope made something called the Doctrine of Discovery. And you need to look into that, because that said, if you went someplace and the people were not Christians, you were entitled to kill them and take their properties, even if they later converted to Christianity. That is the basis of property law in both North and South America. That is why the colonial period happened. That's the legal foundation for it. Is the Pope made this decree that if you're not a Christian, you don't own anything. And he did not recognize Protestants as Christians. So there, and as far as the New World is concerned, Brazil was given to the Portuguese, and the rest was all given to the Spanish, except the Spanish, when they got far enough north, ran into the French, who had come in via Canada. And some after that was when the English came in along the eastern seaboard in Canada and what's now the United States. So there were wars. There were several pretty nasty wars where different native tribes affiliated with different Europeans. And we know how it eventually turned out was millions of natives were massacred through every country where Europeans touched. And I'm not talking about just Native Americans. I'm talking about Africa. I'm talking about Asia and Australia. Every place that Europeans touched, the natives were killed in the name of taking their land under the doctrine of discovery. So the Vatican has had an ongoing war with people who don't submit to it. And the Germans were so not wanting to submit that after the Crusades in the Middle East were over with, the Pope sent the Teutonic Knights back to Prussia and continued crusading there for another 300 years. They took over Prussia and they went east, and nobody stopped them until they got to Poland. They wiped out Eastern Germany. They wiped out Latvia. They wiped out Lithuania. Nobody stopped them until they got to the Catholic King of Poland, who was married to a Jewish woman. He stopped them. So that was that all of this stuff was happening at the same time. People don't realize how much happened in that time period. And then they tell me, well, there was no history between 400 and 1400. And I'm like, what's wrong with you people? There was so much that happened then that created the world we live in today. We didn't just go from Rome to modern countries.
Right.
We had 500 years of war with the Middle East and then with our own pagan populations. People were murdered, people were burnt, people were ripped from their children and killed in the streets. They decimated Northern Europe and then turned to the Americas and Africa and Asia.
Why do you think that they did this? What do you think the real reason was behind it?
I don't understand it. This is something I haven't been able to wrap my mind around, is why that particular group of people were so bloodthirsty. They were so bloodthirsty that they drove an entire ethnicity off world, and now they're continuing to follow them into space. And I don't understand that. You know, these people have escaped, let them be.
Yeah.
All they wanted to do was live in peace with their own language and their own traditions and just be.
I don't mean to change the subject at all here, but I wanted to ask you about how old are the space colonies that are in our solar system, and how are they seeding them with human life?
Some some of the colonies that the Germans have are 400 years old. Most of the American colonies date from the 1940s or since then.
So how are they 400 years old if they had, explain that?
Okay. Hyperspace drives are time travel.
Yep.
And when the Germans figured that out, they had also figured out that their original 100,000 colonists were not enough genetic diversity to create a long-term set of colonies in space. That's part of why that they asked for 150,000 Americans, is they hoped that these people would want to stay in their colonies and increase their genetic diversity. But the OSS shot us up with Draco DNA, and that made us unsuitable because the Germans wanted Earth human, not ET hybrids. So that was a deliberate foil the plan. So when they realized they were not going to get what they wanted, they started taking ships back in time, and they would visit sites where there had been villages wiped out by the plague, where there had been warfare, where there had been invasions, where there had been famines and people had starved. And one of my altars is on one of those ships. And it was built to look like the ship that was in that painting from Nuremberg. So it's that shape. We thought we were matching the myth so that we would be not interfering with history. Because some of these people would see the ships and obviously make the paintings and things like that. So we matched the myth. Later on, we realized we were why there was a myth. But, you know, we didn't know that at the beginning.
Self-fulfilled prophecy, basically, right?
So What?
Self-fulfilled prophecy.
Yeah, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy thing, but we didn't know it at the time we started. So we were going back in time and taking people who died because that would not interfere with the continuing timeline. So we had regen technology that can bring you back from the dead for up to 4 months. And the longer you're dead, the less memory you have when you come back. But we learned their language at the stage they were at, because language is fluid, it changes over time. So we had to be able to speak the language of the people we were taking, so that when we brought them on board ship, we could understand each other. And then we would slowly teach them our dialect, so everybody was on the same page. But we put them through regen, which healed whatever disease they died from or injuries they died from. And you know how the legend is that the Valkyrie come and they take off the heads of those dying valiantly in battle and they take them to Valhalla?
Yeah.
Our ship was Valhalla. Our captain was not Odin, but Bill. And they dressed us in black smart suits with gold armor over
Then you
us.
take their heads and you wake them up at a regen, put them in a regen tank. Hey, you get to fight forever, soldier. This is what heaven is.
That's the true heaven is. You're in the halls of Valhalla with Odin forever. And yes, you fight, except we would talk to them, tell them the real situation. We need colonists. We need people who know how to live without electricity or modern technology, because we are establishing infrastructure in a new colony on another world, and said, and you'll be safe from whoever their enemy was. And we had 1,000 colonies with 1 billion population on each, going back 400 years. It worked really, really well. These were strong, healthy people. We didn't take women who had died in childbirth because we have enough of that problem out there already. No. That's a genetic situation, and women who are going to be able to have a baby without bleeding out or the baby being too big for their hip structure. So we avoided things that would be an ongoing problem. Now, if that sounds like eugenics, to a certain extent it is, because we knew about certain problems on
A lot of
Earth.
people need to understand about these programs, I think, is like when we talk about what they did to us and how they operate and what they do, like for instance, the fact that there are eugenics involved, that doesn't mean we personally support these things, that we support eugenics or support Nachtwaffen and what they're doing or whatever. We're just saying this is the reality. This is what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. On Earth, my parents were eugenicists. My 3 children have congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is a genetic disease that comes through the Stuart family, the ruling house of Scotland and England. Yes, I'm a distant descendant of those folks. But I'm still of the family line enough that my kids all had this disease. So, because they're medication dependent, my mother kept telling me outright to kill them.
Jesus.
This is the primary issue that I have with my family is I did not kill my children.
Jesus, man. Fucked up.
So I
So
am not,
obviously you don't support eugenics, which is bad.
my whole life has been fucked over because I did not support eugenics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I,
I don't know. I think it's weird that people associate us like with programs that kidnapped us when we were children. Like, no, we're telling you what they believe and how they operate. We're not saying that that's what we believe and that's how we operate. Like, there's obviously a huge difference. I feel like I shouldn't have to explain this, but I'm doing it just to be safe.
I recently had a guest bail on me 2 days before the interview because he finally realized that my show was called a Nachtwaffen pilot, and he panicked and said, I don't want to be associated with Nazis. I'm not a Nazi.
Yeah.
On the Nolan Square, which I'm not sure everybody knows what that is, it's a test of where you are politically. I consistently test out as a liberal libertarian, and I match up almost exactly with Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Consistently. That's not exactly a Nazi.
Yeah. It goes without saying, but also I don't know, like people are weird. They like to there's certain subjects that are so sensitive that if you talk about them at all, they automatically assume that you're like all about it or something. Like, and if we got to mention Project Paperclip and World War II and what happened with the Nazis because that's a huge part of what's all going on here. But it doesn't mean that we think what happened was good or that we support the Nazi party or Hitler or any of that shit. Like I said, I feel like I shouldn't have to elaborate on that. But yeah, we're just trying to explain to people what really happened here with our world's history, which we're not being told the truth about. And it's important people do know the truth.
The truth is that the people of the world have been lied to for 70 years and told that the Allies won when they did not. They have been told that America is the land of the free and the brave, and it's not. And anybody who wondered about freedom hasn't been paying attention for the last 30 years. And that we're told that the Americans are smart and that it's a land of opportunity, but all of the opportunity seems to have gone the way of corporations since 9/11. A lot of our freedom has been gone since the Patriot Act. And we've gotten so polarized that most people can't even talk to each other anymore without getting mad and wanting to become violent. And it's
I've been trying to do better with
frustrating.
that because there's people that a lot of people I disagree with in this community. I've been trying to do better, but also sometimes it gets frustrating. I don't know, but it is what it is. Like, but I do agree that a divided. If we're all fighting culture wars and fighting over all these issues, then we can't fight against like the ruling class. We're not fighting against
That's the
our
whole point
mutual
of it.
oppressor. Yeah.
That's the whole point, is if we're busy fighting each other, we can't fight them. And they are trying to reinstitute feudalism, where the king owns everything and the rest of us only occupy our property at his pleasure.
Yeah, like we basically don't own anything. It's already happening with home ownership.
Well, it's
Everybody
been
rents where they live. Nobody owns a home anymore.
you
Less
don't
than
own it anything if you have to pay fees on it every year.
Yeah,
If you have to pay property tax, if you have to pay a car registration fee, you don't own that property.
yeah, I think you're right.
You
That makes
know,
sense to me.
you're just leasing it from the government. So when you have to pay car insurance, when you have to pay homeowners insurance, when you have to pay property taxes, when you have to pay this fee, that fee, and the other fee, when you have to pay licensing on your vehicle, when when you have to pay licensing to be able to drive, and you have to have that piece of paper that is your identity card, and you have to have it on your person and able to present at any time that any peace officer decides to ask for it. You can go to prison now for not having your ID on you. Okay, when I was a child, we used to make fun of European countries for that. The thing was, papers, please. We used to make fun of them for that, and now we're doing it. And we want to chip people so that they can prove they've had a shot, or they can prove
I hope
that
it
they
never
have
gets
the
there.
money, or they can prove
I've been
whatever it
hearing about
is.
that for such a long time, and I just hope it never actually comes. But I agree that it's definitely not a good thing. Like, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope we stand up against it.
I've been watching people since, okay, I've been awake somewhat since the JFK assassination. I knew at the time that it was a coup d'etat. And the people who have been in charge ever since have been slowly turning us into one of these fascist control every detail since then. And so I've been watching this since 65 at least. I was 10 years old in 1965. So I've been watching each step by step by step by step by step. And at every step of the way, you've got flag carrying Americans that are saying, yes, we have to do this. The people that are fighting it are marginalized and treated like they're crazy. The majority is going along with it step by step by step. Some of them are even begging for it. And that scares the crap out of me. Having lived in space in a black op, chipped into the ship's computer, where if you thought the wrong thing, they would drop you to the floor in a seizure. And I'm watching them push for that same thing here. I've lived that. I'm screaming, hell no.
But Elon Musk, though, he's an
Uh,
entrepreneur.
I'm sorry. I would like to believe that these are people good at heart, but the evidence is there is nobody at that income level that gives a shit about us.
I think you're right. I
We
think the evidence points towards that.
we are a business expense on a good day. And why would someone in business care about the expenses? We are to be cut as much as possible. I mean, anybody who's in basic economics should know that. I'm not talking anything unreasonable. From their point of view, we are an expense that comes out of their profit margin. So why would they give a damn about us?
Who actually owns the Earth?
The Anunnaki.
But who are the Anunnaki?
The Guardians have informed me that the Anunnaki named Marduk is the rightful owner of this planet.
Fucking asshole.
That is how the galaxy sees it. So from their point of view, the Anunnaki owned the planet and they had this big ranch, and in the back 40, they had these monkeys that were an occasional pain in the butt. And they went on a trip and they came back and they found that the monkeys had started building houses and factories and farming. And they didn't quite know what to do about us. And so Galaxy decided, well, we're going to keep an eye on these monkeys so nobody else can come in and invade. So that's where we sit right now, is the Galaxy is keeping an eye on us, the monkeys. And no, we don't own the planet. Marduk does.
Who's
As
Mark?
far as the grown-ups, the grown-ups in air
Does he
quotes.
still own the planet?
Yeah. He's alive. He's been forcibly retired. He was found guilty of corruption and abuse of sentient beings, as in us.
I personally know Marduk very well.
He was found guilty of corruption and crimes against a sentient race. And he was forcibly retired, but he still actually owns the place. And yeah, I know him really well too. And
that doesn't sit very well with me. I think that we need to change
that. It's going to take a lot of work. The first thing that's going to happen is we have to get all the humans back into the solar system. And the Guardians are working on that as we speak. That's what all those ships come. Huh?
Who are the Guardians?
The Guardians are the Stasi of the galactic civilization. They call themselves Galactic Authority to me. The Guardians are the military police. If they show up in your sky, be scared. They are not necessarily
They're
nice
not okay
people.
with what Marduk did or him owning Earth?
They told me that he owns Earth, but they held the court that found him guilty of crimes. So,
how can one individual own a planet? That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't seem right.
a lot of things out there don't seem right.
Yeah, I personally knew Marduk. He had a lot to do with altering the timeline. Montauk had a time bubble, obviously in Montauk, New York, but there was another time bubble in England that I was working in at the same time as working at Montauk, and Marduk run the time bubble in England, and he.
Let me guess, it says Stonehenge.
No, it's actually a Stainborough Castle, which is a castle that never was a full castle because we decimated it in that time bubble. And the explanation is that it's a 17th century royal from Normandy, I think, moved to England and wanted to make it look like he had been there for longer than he had been to establish nobility faster there. But the real explanation and what actually happened is, of course, a historian wouldn't guess this, is the Montauk crew went in there and decimated it because he kept on going through a portal to Montauk and telling us to do shit. He bossed us around and we had to listen to him because he would just kept coming in through a portal with his guys. He was a fucker. That guy is a fucker. I hate that guy.
There are a lot of those guys around. People who think that time bubbles and time travel are new are simply ignorant.
No, he'd been operating that time bubble in England. That was from ancient times. That. And when we were at Montauk, I still don't know the whole thing behind it, but when Montauk 2.0 had happened and they took over the base, I shouldn't take over this interview and make it about me, but
It's okay.
they had
I
to,
do it on my show.
yeah, they had to when I had to go back to the time bubble in England because Marduk owned me. He claims to own me. Like he claims my soul is his piece of property, just like the earth. That's why I just think this guy's got a chip on his shoulder. Like, who the fuck can own a soul? Like, how can you own a soul? And I think that's what this is all about. And these programs, they think they own our souls. And I think we need to
Yeah, they
assert
do.
something here. We need to assert the fact that you can't own a soul, and it needs to be a punishable offense. That's what I think needs to happen. I don't know where to start or how to do it, but if the universe was just at all, that's what would happen.
I don't believe the universe is just. I do believe it's balanced between good and evil. And that the creation of good automatically creates the same amount of evil, and the creation of evil automatically creates the same amount of good. So all of these people that are fighting to take over, if any of them win, they're going to end up destroying it all. But that's kind of more or less what I've learned from the occult stuff.
I've seen timelines where we decide to fight against the Anunnaki, and it's more or less like, you know, those like nice lights you put outside and the bugs just fly at them. That's what it's like. We don't have any fucking chance.
That's pretty much what I've remembered from them.
We have to listen to what they say, period.
I don't, but I can't talk about that publicly. There are limits to what I'm allowed to talk about.
Well, I'm pretty sure that yeah, there's stuff that I don't like talking about publicly either, like the last time I saw Marduk, which was 3D in the here and now.
There have been a couple of his avatars, because an Anunnaki that incarnates as a human has to incarnate into at least 60 bodies, or it fries the baby. So I know 2 of them. And one of them got so paranoid he was going to kill his wife, because when he would get up to go to work, she would roll over and snuggle his pillow because it smelled like him.
What?
He thought that meant she was going to kill him. Sorry, guys, that's what women do when they love you.
Sounds like you might be a little cuckoo.
Yeah, the other one got angry with me talking about SSP and said he never allowed extraterrestrials onto his plane. And I'm like, I'm tired of being told what to do. Yeah. So I don't talk to either of them. But what I can say about it is I have an alter who works in the court off of Saturn that is run on behalf of the Guardians. So some of the things that I know are from that altar because I have overlap. So if they're in that court, I'm like a bailiff there. I'm not anybody really important, but I'm there. And I have learned a lot about galactic law from serving in their court. And they've had me serve arrest warrants on Earth. I was handed this stack of arrest warrants for Anunnaki who had violated the rights of sentient beings, us, and that they were to be tried. So I started with the ones that were actively harassing me and people I knew. They were easier to find. Come on. So, after I arrested about 20 of them, they suddenly got really scarce. But so far, all of them that have been tried have been found guilty. And Marduk is the only one that has not been executed.
Why not? He fucking deserves it. Why?
Because he pled guilty but repentant.
Whatever.
And the court bought it. And I'm having a temper tantrum in the audience and was told I had to maintain more decorum,
I
or
could
I
have been
was
there for that and told him all the fucked up shit that he did to me and made me do.
They did fit him with a bomb in his head, and the next time he relapses, then he'll be blown up. They have this really simple view of justice. You're guilty, you're executed. You're innocent, you're let go. Guilty but repentant, you get to pull that once. You're fitted with a bomb in your head, you relapse, you're dead.
Oh man.
That's their whole justice system. So, and if you are in court and you start dissing the witnesses or the victims, they assume that you're using legalese to lie. And so if you're lying in court, you're guilty. It's a very simple system.
Yeah.
So, and if you're executed, your soul is turned over to the lords of karma. And they deal with you.
Does anybody's soul just ever get deleted?
What?
Do they ever just delete your soul?
No.
Okay.
They never just delete your soul. Although when the Anunnaki picked me up in 2018, they were trying to delete my soul. They had me inside a tank. They called it the truth machine. And it's designed for interrogating extraterrestrials. And they had me in it, and they were peeling off my altars, recording all the memories of the altar, and then destroying the altar. And they were on the second one when Nachtwaffen showed up to rescue my ass.
They do that.
Yeah.
Or they'll take you. I've had situations where I was serving with another group, and then Nachtwaffen came, and then they took me from that group, wiped my memory, and they're like, "Okay, you work for us now." I've had that happen before.
If they own altars of yours, they think they own you. Now, I don't know why they rescued me, but I was really grateful they did. And that was when I sat and I spent months digging through the memories that I had. It was, okay, Nazis would not have done this. They would not have rescued me with the loss of a ship. I was a lieutenant. I was not worth the loss of a ship. And yet they did this. And so I had to really think about, bless you. I had to really think about who these people really were, why they rescued me. Because I don't see, even being a navigator, I don't see that I was that important that they would do this. So I had to really take a good look. It's gotten me in trouble with some in the community who want to see everything in black and white, and Earth isn't black and white. Why would space?
Yeah, no shit. Like
you're
they
talking,
talk about like different alien races, and they'll be like, they wear this and this, and this is what they wear. It's like, what makes you think that everybody just wears the same thing every day, all the time?
yeah.
Like, there's just this race. Like, I don't know. People have these very generalized ideas, and it's like, what makes you think that things are that way? I don't know. It's silly sometimes.
Um, I've interacted with a lot of different reptilian races, and then I listened to some of these people. Well, they're all the same thing, and I'm like, you look at reptiles on Earth. You have
That's
lizards.
another
You
good
have
question. Is the
turtles.
Anunnaki just one race? Is it multiple races of reptilian, or is it one?
Okay, the Anunnaki that were on Earth was a group of from 6 to 20 different races. And I've never gotten a straight answer from anybody about it.
Are the Shahami part of that?
The Shahami are one of them. And the Shahami were who picked me up. Now,
Explain who the
I've
Shahami are to our guests on this watching this.
what?
Explain who the
Oh,
Shahami are to the people watching the show.
okay. To people watching this show, the Shahami are who we look like. They are mammals. They have hair that's curly like Arkham's. They have the men have full beards that they braid and bead them, and they come down full. They're very tall. The ones I have met have averaged 9 feet, which is 2.5 meters. They have paper white skin that glows in colors like squid based on their emotional. Amongst themselves, a lot of their communication is skin color, because they'll shift color as they're talking. They use Ormus to prolong their life expectancy. If it's a silver-based Ormus, they'll be this ugly blue-gray that looks like they're dead. And if they're using a copper-based Ormus, then they'll be a really light green. And you'll find those descriptions in ancient mythologies where the gods were blue or green.
Oh man,
And it has,
I can like literally pull out a book that I have, like with the cover as like one of the ancient Egyptian gods, and he's 9 feet, like he's way taller than the other people, and he's light green.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It has to do with the Ormus, because that's the platinum class in the periodic table, but you can't separate them at the level of chemistry that we have today. You can't, if it grabs one of them, it'll grab all of them. What they're looking for is monoatomic gold, but they end up with monoatomic silver, monoatomic copper, platinum, as well as gold. And what it does is it seals off the telomeres on the end of your DNA, because each time that your cell divides, it peels off a telomere layer. And the monoatomic gold seals it where that can't happen. So it keeps you alive longer. And because it keeps you at a younger stage longer, you're healthier. And if you have the Shahami DNA, which most of us do, it can also improve your brain function. So most of the memory cocktails are based on gold Ormus. So what else are they like? They're telepathic. When they get into your head, you cannot hear anything else. You cannot think anything else. You would only hear them, and they are persistent as fuck. And
Man,
it's,
is it not true that the archangels from the Bible are Shami?
yes, they are. All of the angels from the Bible are Jahami. And I have been in person with them 3D physical, and we are hardwired to kneel before them and worship them and obey them. And I'm taking every ounce of strength in this physical body to not do this. They're like, kneel human. And I'm like, I don't serve you.
I've never
Leave
been a
me
fan of
alone.
them.
I spent decades that I was a church mouse.
Well, also let me explain something. When I say I've never been a fan of them, that is kind of literally racist and speciesist. But from my experience with the ones that I've dealt with, I guess it is racist. We're talking about aliens here. I remember a past life I got killed by one of them. Okay, I got stabbed in the chest by one of them. I don't have a good relationship with them. But anyway, I don't mean to.
I have a past life where I was one of them and I was sacrificed to end a war. And I come back as me and they want to kill me. And I'm like, what the fuck did I ever do to you people?
Yeah, they were very they're just very possessive over the humans that they claim to own, and they I don't know, I just remember them being like very just shifty and just, I mean, they get angry, they get really, really angry, like really don't want to piss them off. Like, I don't know, because then that's the thing is in the Bible you hear these descriptions of how like, angelic they are and flowing light around them, and everybody's all in awe. It's like, yeah, but if you see them angry, it's a whole nother fucking story.
Have you ever watched Stargate?
No, I watched the movie, but not the series.
Okay. My interaction with this Jahami, they remind me a lot of Go Old. Their attitudes towards things. Their I am your God, you will worship me. And they're very service to self.
Yeah.
I've not interacted with any of their females. I have no idea what that's about. But
What is that about? That's a good,
they
you got a good point there. What
they
are the
keep their females in an inner room inside their home. They never see the light of day. And I have no idea why.
Sounds like, yeah, it sounds like the religion they created took a chip off the old block.
Well, their religion is just an extension of their culture. I should say their religions, because most of Earth's sky god religions are based on them. We really got off topic. The Jahami are physical beings who are capable of going interdimensional. And when one of them decides to interact with you, you don't have a lot of choice in the matter. And it's been frustrating, annoying. I was expected to serve arrest warrants on them. And yes, I did have a team of guardians backing me up. Otherwise, I'd probably be dead right now. So
They're very, very powerful beings.
my guardians assigned to me are the same type of beings described in the Emerald Tablets as, quote, hounds of the corners. and they do frighten Shahami. So we haven't had to be violent yet. They've all shown up. So, but yeah, it's a real trip. This little human, disabled old lady showing up and saying, "You are hereby arrested by the Guardians and expected to appear at this court. And you will have to go with these guys now." And yeah, so I have Hounds of the Corners, and I have a group of the Draco Queen Mother's personal guard that between them, the Shahami don't argue too bad.
What is the difference between the Draco or the Draconians and the Anunnaki? Is there a difference, or what is it?
The Draco were one of the races that were part of the group Anunnaki. The Jahami are a subject race of the Draco.
So they're under the Draco.
They're under the Draco. So when I show up and I have 4 Hounds of the Corners and I have a dozen Draco guards with me, they don't argue with me. They may cuss me, but they don't argue with me. So,
where are the Shahami and the Anunnaki located now? There's some of them on Earth.
yeah, there's some on Earth, there's some on Mars, there's some on their homeworld, which I have been on it. I got there in a spaceship.
Or the Shahami world?
The Shahami homeworld. I've been there.
It's all glowy, right? Is it all glowy there? Like
yeah, it's shiny. They have where we have an ozone layer, they have a layer of powdered gold around them. And it reflects the light back in, and yeah, it's glowy. It looks like marble temples, white on a hillside, and lots of trees in between. It's really, really pretty and really, really elegant. And you would think you were in ancient Greece, except that they have hovercraft. And they're bigger, of course, and you never ever see females. The King's Chamber, which is where I was tried, is lined with oak panels that have been dyed darker. And I was arrested there and then put into the truth machine. And when my guardians showed up later to arrest them, one of the Draco used his claws to carve into the hardwood. It translates, we had it carved in Hebrew. I can't remember the exact phrase right now, but it's from where Belteshazzar was overrun by the Babylonians. Many Tekel Upsharin, I think is what it was. It's basically, you have been weighed and found wanting. And we had that carved into their king's chamber so that the new king would remember. Um, Nengishizita is the new king after that event. And he occasionally shows up to talk to me. He has been mostly respectful. He knows if he abuses me in any way that the guardians will come for him. But pretty much he and Anki were the last ones that had not been arrested of the royal family. So his dad was too old, so he got the job. And we had an unusual relationship for a while. I'm glad we are past that stage.
It's interesting stuff. I've always wanted to ask you about a lot of those things.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about it because people assume that when I'm talking about the gods, that I'm talking about religion, and I'm not. I'm talking about 3D physical beings who generally want to kill me.
No, yeah, I know exactly what that's like. I mean, with Marduk, like I know Marduk. Like I had memories of Marduk, his name being Marduk, and I brought it up to someone. They're like, the Marduk? I'm like, what do you mean the Marduk? And they're like, from the Sumerian tablets? I'm like, what? I look it up. I'm like, holy shit.
Holy shit, yes. I had 2 lifetimes as one of them. I had 5 lifetimes as a Draco. I had 3 lifetimes on Mintaka as a Orion Royal. Before that, I was in Sirius and bebopped around the planets there. Before that, I was on Lyra. So
You've been around. What do you find helps you with your getting recall? Like getting like how does it work for you? When did it start? Like what was the first memories that you had, and like progressing through this, like how has it been getting your memories back? And I guess we can segue into altars and really what they are as well a little bit with that.
I got the mass of my SSP memories because a NSA unit used my remember code from my mind fracture. They had the actual code that these altars had been trained to remember, so you can debrief. So they used that code on me, and it's from Wizard of Oz. And I got this big lump of memories that was all in German and all mixed together, and I had to sort out, what am I remembering? When was this? So it took me 3 years to be able to talk about it. But I had anomalies all along. 1990, I would wake up screaming, wake up the neighbors screaming, dreaming that I was crawling through the walls, And when I got the actual memory back, it was at Langley. I had been nailed inside a wall to mind fracture me and left to suffocate. And they pulled me out just before I was dead. They did that until it stopped working. So that, the memories were bubbling up, but no real context. And dreams are a little bit different than an actual memory. So the dream was I was a child crawling through walls. The memory was I was nailed inside the wall. You can see how they mesh together, but from one to the other is a leap that I didn't know to make before. So as far as I know, I'm the only one that's actually been activated on purpose. And this particular team worked for the NSA. They were Russian translators. The man who actually used the code on me was my age, and he had been at Langley with me. And that was why they used him, was because they knew I would trust him.
For our viewers, what is Langley?
Huh?
For our viewers, what is Langley?
Langley Air Force Base in Virginia is now the headquarters of the CIA. But at that point, the CIA had not yet built that. And I was in a hospital situation somewhere on the base where I was kept underground in the basement. And that they initially started off with 1,000 of us. And by 1964, there were 20 of us left.
What happened to the kids?
They died in the mind fracture process.
Did they?
Okay, they had a regen tank. So if they had just died, they would have brought them back. But they became catatonic. And the regen does not fix your mind.
Yep.
So once they became catatonic, they were gone. And I never saw the bodies. So I don't know what happened to them. But we went down from 1,000 to 20 in 5 years. So this is the kind of return on investment that they were doing. Randy Kramer and I talked about it, and he said that because he had access to the military side of it, that they had felt that the program was wasting too many valuable resources. And so they came up with a different approach to the whole activate the psi abilities that was gentler on the assets. In other words, they stopped killing as many kids. So, although looking at the reports from Montauk over the 40 years they were in business, they killed 300,000. So they had about the same odds. Now, their goal was to create the same 13 by 13 by 13 hierarchical cubic array of altars that Stuart Swerdlow talks about was the goal at Montauk, so that each altar could be sold to a different agency with a tissue sample to create a clone body to put it in. And these assets could be used over and over and over and over. So I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 altars. And I have reintegrated 32. And with the reintegration of the altar, you get the memories of that altar. And otherwise, you have blank spots, missing time. You don't know what the hell you did. You don't know what you were used for. You have no idea who those altars work for. Now, I've reintegrated 32, and I have probably a dozen more that I get bleed over from. So the ones I get bleed over from, they're in bodies. They're active. And they've put in a safety mechanism so that I'm sitting in the back of their head watching, feeling, smelling, tasting what they're doing, but I cannot affect them because I popped into an altar that was working with James Rank. We were going into a cyborg factory to get upgrades. Penny popped in. Penny saw rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of cyborg bodies and humans on meat hooks around the edge of the room, dripping blood, alive, moaning, crying. Penny freaked. Well, I have electromagnetic pulses are one of my psi abilities. And when I got upset seeing the humans hanging on meat hooks around the edge of the factory, I sent out an EM pulse and blew up the power plant. This is the place on Mars that they're telling you is a volcano because it's still smoking. I did that. So they put in a safety thing where I cannot do that if I bleed over into another altar again. So
Where was
my
that?
couldn't hear you.
Where was that factory?
It was on Mars.
Mars. Okay.
Mars. You can check Google Mars, and it's the place where the smoke's coming up.
Google Mars. I never looked at that before.
Google Mars is an interesting thing because anything that we know is a base, you'll suddenly have it a bunch of pixelated and you can't see anything. Once in a while, they'll remove the pixelation and let you see that it's there, but only on April 1st.
Really?
So nobody believes you.
Wow, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's trippy. But there are, well, Ileana, the star traveler, has mapped out the planetary corporations bases that she knows of on Mars. I'm pretty sure that Ares Prima was on Mons Olympus. I know I've been through the Rift Valley in a plane. I know that the war against the native raptors and the native ants was so that they could have more suitable places for humans, and that we ended up moving and creating Neu Berlin in closer to the pole because there's more water there. But I don't know exactly where they are. And most of what my job was to fly what we would call near Earth orbit. And the computer would scan the ground and I was looking for raptor nests. And in between, I was looking for human remains to bring back to be regenerated. So on Mars, I was called Penelope Valkyrin. So
They called me Fetcher. They still do, because I'm still out there right now.
Yeah, I'm still out there. In November and December of 2018, I was taken twice a night for 45 days for 60 and backs as a navigator. The Guardians had told the Germans to evacuate a specific colony, and they basically said, fuck you. And so the Guardians blew the place up. So we are taking every ship we can find and going back in time, redialing to rescue as many of those people as we can. And we're taking them to planetoids in the Oort cloud, and they are creating underground colonies. And so they are starting over. And as we come through the sun, planetary corporations is attacking. And their assets, who are whistleblowers and public, are talking about what great, wonderful battles they're having, what great victories, that they're stomping the Germans. But they're not saying those are refugee ships full of women and children. So, because it's a time loop that I'm in, the me here has already finished all of them, but all 90 of them are still in progress for the time zone. So out there, I'm working my ass off trying to save these people. And the me here knows we were only able to get half of them. We didn't have enough ships. So you can only go back to the same moment in time so many times before it will no longer allow you to.
Really?
Yeah. So by the time we reached saturation, we had only rescued half the people.
I never knew that.
So the German High Command, Oberkommando, has now decided to cooperate with the Guardians. And they are evacuating all of the German colonies and returning to the solar system. What the Guardians have told me is once they get all of the humans from the galaxy back into the solar system, we will be given the opportunity to let them parent us as a race, to teach us how to be responsible galactic citizens. If we say yes, we will be given the technology for everyone who is sentient, and that's more than just humans. Everyone who is sentient will be given food, water, housing, shelter, education, clothing, everything we need for survival will be provided through technology. The money debt system will be gone, and people will be able to practice their skills, their talents, to use what they are good at without having to worry about having to make money. And if we say no, there's a natural disaster that's scheduled, and we will be shoved back to the Stone Age to start over. Because as we are now, we are a threat to the rest of the galaxy.
I would agree with that.
So
human beings are fuckers.
This is what I've been told. And this is what I'm supposed to be telling people, that we have this decision coming, and it's in our best interest to say yes.
Yeah.
But if we want to be stubborn and selfish and nobody's going to get something without working for it, then we'll be shoved back to the Stone Age to try again.
Better luck next time.
Yeah, I understand that we have already said no 4 times
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Why?
because we have this thing instilled into us that we have to struggle to live. That if we don't struggle to live, that we don't deserve it. We don't want to give up pecking order.
That makes sense.
You know, I mean, every time they raise the minimum wage, how many people do you hear complaining because their pay wasn't raised with the minimum wage and now they're the same pay as everybody else after working so hard to get $5 ahead of
Yeah,
them.
ask your boss for more money, dumbass. That's my explanation to those people. Or get a better job.
Yeah, tell your boss if you don't get back to the same scale that you're going to find another job,
Yeah.
or tell them you did find another job.
Light the fire under his ass.
So, it is what it is. People are stuck with this idea in their heads.
Yeah.
And I've
I've
talked to them and talked to them and talked to them, and they throw it back in my face and they say nasty things. And if it weren't my job to tell this, I wouldn't be, because people are fucking nasty out there.
yeah, they are.
So
I mean, I've already had people ask me like, if you have Omega suicide programming, why haven't you killed yourself already? It's like, really? Like, fucking, is that a real honest question you ask me? Like this is
I got sent back.
yeah.
Yeah,
They use
I
time travel bullshit to make you not able to kill yourself.
I got sent back. It's not even time travel. It's there is something beyond who talks to me and says, well, you can't get by with this. You have to go back. Don't
Well,
do this again.
that'll be a segue into the next question, the last question. What do you think of the idea that we are living inside of a computer simulation?
I know we are.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
come on. Um, I have pernicious anemia. I've had 3 near-death experiences from it. The last one, I decided I'm not going to go any of the usual places. So I took myself to the black hole at the origin of this universe. And I went through that. And it was a black hole for a very, very long way. And then suddenly it's this huge, bright light. And there's this honking computer sitting there. And I'm in a pod attached to this thing. A headgear thing. Heads. And I take that off and I crawl out of the pod and I come out. It's so bright of a white light, I can't see anything but the computer because it's a dark gray. And there are these people, I use the term loosely, and I'm not talking, it's all telepathy. And we talked about it, and it was, they thought I was one of their programmers that they had sent to the machine to figure out why their simulation wasn't working right. They had no idea we were sentient. they had no idea that some of us had figured out we were in a simulation. I told them their anomalies were us exercising free will. And they in shock because that meant they could not turn off that computer. Because if they did, we'd be gone.
Do you know why they made the computer?
They had decided to see what parameters in a universe allowed life to exist. So they had been watching the development, not just our world, but lots of worlds. And they had watched entire galaxies be taken over by AI. They had watched entire galaxies never develop life at all. And they had watched the panspermia basically bring life into everything in this galaxy. So they had been watching all this all along. And to them, it was a big science experiment, and they had no idea we were sentient. And so with that experience, they and I had a discussion about what else did I think was wrong. And I said, well, we're about 20% too far into dominance rather than cooperation. That being the main problem I see in the world is the desire to dominate.
Yeah.
And I think some dominance is necessary for personal survival. But I think we're too far. Individually
Oh, for sure.
and
Individualism is killing us.
yeah. So I talked to them about that too. And they gave me some instructions to try when I got back, and I've tried them, and I'm waiting to see how it turns out. But I'm not supposed to talk about them, but the main goal is to balance us better.
We're approaching the 2-hour mark here. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I ended up being a very in-depth interview. And I really like some of the stuff that we got to talk about. It went a lot of places that I didn't expect, but they're all good.
Yeah. I never know where I'm going to go with an interview. And when I'm talking to someone who has a background, I tend to go deep without even realizing it. Misha Johnston once told me I can go from 0 to too deep in 10 seconds or less.
Yeah. No, we
Yeah,
got pretty deep
it
into
is.
this stuff.
It is what it is. This is a topic that too many people see it as fun and games, space cowboys, shoot 'em
Oh
up.
yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, it's layers and layers and layers of slavery and
Trauma. It's
way too
trauma.
much drama. And people who think they're going to get rich by going public and then get angry and nasty when they don't. And honestly, the producers and the hotels and networks making money. Everybody else is just sort of bashing their heads against.
Well, I think we're just in the very initial beginning phases of this, so you know, I just gotta hold on hope. Since I've come public, I've activated at least 10 people. So just gotta keep going.
Well, Congress is having hearings next week about are the ETs real and we so this is going to get interesting.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, it I was just notified that my internet is unstable. So
Gotcha. Well, it
yeah.
might be a good time to, I guess, cut things out since it's been about 2 hours anyway.
Yeah, it's probably a good place to leave.
Well, thanks for talking with me. It was a great first interview. I've got a couple other ones lined up. I'm gonna be talking with Matt Tracy. I'm gonna be talking with Joseph, and there's gonna be more. And then yeah, we're gonna be doing videos with like just like commentary over like old Al Bielek and Preston Nichols videos and stuff. It's gonna get pretty interesting.
Yeah, don't forget that Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah.
Saturday, we are doing, as far as I know, the first ever roundtable of the Montauk 2.0 kids, or at least the ones that can sit and be civil.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
I
I'm looking.
invited more people than have accepted, so don't think someone's not real because they didn't show.
Oh, okay. No, I wouldn't think that.
So
Yeah, no, I've discovered a couple of new Montauk kids since I last talked to you. It's pretty
well,
interesting.
I didn't expect it to be the last one, and I found some clips that I was able to download from the internet. So I'll be showing some short excerpts where some of the perps admitted to certain things that that I'm going to ask you guys what you think about them.
Oh, we'll fucking tell you, dude.
Oh, I know. I don't expect any of you to be shy.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of pain attached to that whole situation, that everything that happened there.
Well, I would be shocked if there wasn't. When I was 6, I spent 6 months at Montauk, and it was before Al Bielek was there. It was a different program, but it was still very disturbing on many, many levels.
Yeah.
So
Well, I appreciate
Montauk
you giving us.
isn't a new thing either. So
No, it's not. Well, I appreciate you giving us somewhere. I mean, I think it'll be good. We'll be able to cover a lot of ground with that. It's gonna be 4 hours long, you said?
I have been promised 4 hours of airtime.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I'll
we
have to
don't
talk
have
about
to
it.
go the whole time if everybody's upset.
No, okay. Well, it's good to give everybody enough time to talk.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
we all appreciate that. But anyway, it was a great interview with you, Penny, and I'll see you on the 28th.
Okay.
You take care. Bye. And thanks everyone for watching.